I mean, this is a little bit different than 2017, Rita.
Oh, way different. Playoff bound. And you know, playoff bound. Look, and for one reason only, you had a slim doubt in terms of how this was going to go, right? Because history sometimes does have a thing of repeating itself. I was confident that the Ravens were going to win, by the way.
Absolutely.
However, you watch the way that the Bengals have played down the stretch. They've been competitive. You weren't sure how this was going to be. The Ravens were 13.5 favorites coming into this game. Wasn't sure if they were going to cover, although I wanted them to, because I think you need to make a statement against bad football teams. That's how I feel.
Okay.
Particularly when you're going into a situation where you're going to the playoffs. But the Ravens exceeded expectations for me today.
Did you feel like they made a statement?
I mean, I think that
they ran the hell out of the ball. They did what they do.
350 yards. Well, I'm sure by now more, but
and it could have been more if they would have left Lamar.
Right. Last series, I think, was the 350 mark that they got. But I think that you have to give. I think how you win and in terms of point differential, I can't speak, matters in terms of things like this, because if you're barely beating a bad team going into the playoffs, I don't like that. I'm sorry.
No, man, I get the vibe. It's not you're not feeling it.
Right, but teams that you should be handedly beating, you should be handedly beating. And I do think that the Ravens, for the most part, there's a couple games here and there. New England, obviously, is one that got away, where teams that were essentially beneath them, they've not come to the challenge. But for the most part, in Lamar's tenure, they have beat down the guys that they've been supposed to beat down.
For the most part, sure.
So I wanted them to continue the trend that they've been trending up in terms of, offense points and such in the past 4 weeks, to continue today, because you do want to make a statement to everybody.
One punt. They're going to let the other guy punt.
Oh, well, he did punt, though.
That ends. It's the first punt by anybody besides Sam Cook since 2005.
Right, but you want to make a statement going into the playoffs for the other 6 teams that are there and watching you play and say, okay, the last 5 weeks they have absolutely put things together and they look like they are ready to contend.
There's no question. They're rolling. They're doing everything they're supposed to do.
Yes.
And now you get to the. By the way, this is the Project Game Day post-game show.
Oh, yes, it is.
Ravens are in. We know that much.
Yes.
They're in. And now we await to find out who it will be. A couple of things that still matter. First of all, we still have to keep our eye on Miami and just make sure nothing silly happens there. As Buffalo decided, nothing silly is happening. It's now 42-13. Nothing silly is happening there. So what we do know is the Ravens are going to be the 5 seed. They will be the 5 seed in the playoffs. Now it's just a question of whether or not it's going to be Tennessee or Indianapolis, as both of those two teams play later on today. If both win, then Tennessee wins the division. They're the 4 seed. That's where the Ravens will be headed next week. If Indianapolis wins, they're the 4 seed, and that's where the Ravens will be headed next week. Save it.
I ain't going to say nothing.
We'll get to it. She's the NFL chick, Syreeta Hubbard. I'm Glenn Clark. We're in the Chesapeake Employers Insurance studio of Pressbox. The Project Game Day postgame show also brought to you by the U.S. Army. As far as the Ravens side, let's cover the Ravens side, then we get there.
Okay.
What makes me happy is that they never got too cute. That from the moment where they had to, when they started playing we either have to win or it's going to be over, they realized we run the football. That's what we do. That's who we are. We run the ball, and then we run the ball, and then the quarterback runs the ball, and then somebody else runs the ball, and we just keep running the football. That is our path to doing something. I'll forever be a little flummoxed by what happened at the beginning of this season. It will never quite make full sense to me. We've
talked about this. We've talked about
this.
There's
a million scenarios. There's a million theories that you can have, right? None of them will ever be justifiable to me. No matter what it is,
I agree.
You'll never be able to justify the thought process, the decision-making that this team used to decide to be something other than a team that just ran the ball constantly starting in week 1 this season. Whatever your theory is, whether it's they wanted to throw the ball more to get better at doing it, or Lamar wanted to do it because he wanted to make himself more valuable, or Greg Roman wanted to do it because he wanted to make himself a better head coaching candidate, whatever your theory is. And I've heard from people that there's a little bit to all of it, right? Like that there's not one particular
I can absolutely
thing.
see being a combined
Yes.
thing of the offensive coordinator, the quarterback, everybody wanting to try to level up. And you and I have said numerous times that leveling up from 14-2 and being
insane.
and having the number 2 scoring offense is a very hard
And
thing
unanimous
to do.
MVP
And a
of the
unanimous
NFL,
MVP
correct.
is a very hard thing to do. I don't know what level up means to you guys, but that's a pretty good ceiling.
Yeah, I would
if you
just-
consider that a ceiling,
look,
that's a ceiling that most people will never see.
Myself, I would probably just try to be that. Like that to me would be my goal.
Yeah.
Would be to be
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
So whatever it was, that happened. You can't rewrite it. You can't do anything about it. You can't change it. It's weird. It's crazy. It's insane. But it happened, and now you move forward. At the point of the year, after the COVID outbreak, where you realized we have to win every game. We cannot slip up the rest of the way. You said, here's who we're going to be. We're going to be the team that we probably should have been all along. We're just going to go run the football and run some more and tell Lamar Jackson, hey, man, we're running. That's what we're doing now. That's who we are. We are going to run the ball. And they have done it, and they have done it quite well. And yes, the competition has helped in the process. There's no doubt about that.
The schedule's the schedule.
This has not been a murderer's row over these last 5 weeks. But yet they've still done it. They've still reminded everyone they're capable of doing it. And so now they go into the postseason with the confidence of a team that knows that what they do, the thing that's going to be make or break and whether or not they can make a run. Everybody that keeps bringing up, I still don't know what happens if the Ravens fall down by 3 scores. I don't know either. I don't have any reason to feel good about it. Here's what I know. They're really good at doing this. And against every opponent they face, this is what they should be trying to do.
And if they don't try to get cute, Glenn, we shouldn't be having a conversation about 3 scores behind.
100%.
So there's that part of it. If you do what you're good at, you should not be having a conversation about being behind. Oh, that's another pick of being behind, because that is what you do best.
Yes, this is their path to
and pretty
winning.
much no one can stop that one thing that you're good at.
If you're doing it the way that you're capable of doing it, right? Like, yes, this is football, and silly things happen, and unexpected things happen, and sometimes you fumble the ball, or there are goofy things that can occur that we can't account for. But the Ravens are so good at this thing that as long as none of those goofy things occur, they should be able to be successful doing it, and they shouldn't. As to your point, the thing that I always talk about when somebody wants to bring up is what happens if they fall behind. Well, a good way to not have to worry about that is to not fall behind. A good way to not put yourself in that position is to do what you do really well, stay competitive, and not find yourself in a spot like that. Now, if they do, we'll deal with it then. We'll have that conversation at that point. But to me, the biggest takeaway for the Ravens is, down the stretch, they reminded everybody this is what they're capable of being. This is who they should be. No matter who the opponent is on the other side of the field, this is your identity. This is what you do. You go do it.
I agree.
That brings us, by the way, let me get through a couple of comments because it's going to bring me to my next conversation that
Okay.
I want to have. Project Game Day post-game show, by the way, from the Chesapeake Employers Insurance Studio. From Amy. Amy just says, I'm happy with what I'm seeing. Well, how could you possibly not be happy with what you're seeing, right? Like this.
No complaints here.
This is great. From Paul, it's official. The Ravens need to keep wearing purple pants all through the playoffs. They're crushing it in purple. I have never spent as much time on this as everybody else
What,
has.
uniform watches?
Yeah,
I enjoy it, but I didn't even think of that until he said it.
The only time I've ever thought about it is when they wore the god-awful mustard-colored pants.
Oh,
That's
I like the
only
peanut butter and jelly look. I know I'm in the minority. I'm very well aware of that, but I do.
Otherwise, I just don't think.
I
about
do
it.
enjoy the peanut butter and jelly look, by the way. So
Jeff, I'm going to save that one. KZ, the Bills putting up 50 on Miami in a must-win game for the Fish
50?
is hilarious.
Is that what's
I don't
happening?
know. It might be up to 50 at this point. Who knows?
I mean, it was 28 at halftime.
It's 49.
Jesus
49,
Christ.
13. Yeah, I mean, I'm still stunned. I'm still stunned that Buffalo decided they were going to try. That's still kind of stunning to me. I get it. Like, Pittsburgh was just close enough that they couldn't decide that they had nothing to worry about and they could pull their guys.
So somebody made a valid point that with the New York governor saying that they are allowed to have a limited amount of fans. It allows
does
them to
make
have
it
two
more.
it would probably give them 2 playoff games as opposed to 1 playoff game if they went 3 or lower. So I'm not mad at that.
I'm not mad at it. I have no idea. If I'm doing this in Buffalo and somebody got hurt today, I have not been paying attention. If somebody got hurt today,
yeah, then we'd be having another conversation.
Then I'd be losing
Yes.
my effing
Absolutely.
mind.
I get it.
About it.
And you and I talked about that
Yeah.
last week. I didn't think that you and I both didn't think that they would be playing, and it is what it is, right? They decided that they wanted a second home game,
Yep.
and that was important to them, and then they went out and did what they had
That's
to
what
do
they
against
did.
Miami. And I'm sorry, but before we move forward, let me just say I am very glad that Miami is not going to be in playoffs. I'm not interested in a 2-quarterback system for the playoffs. I don't.
As a football fan, Rita, I'm glad they're not going to be in it because they are definitely the worst of the AFC.
Yes, they are.
And it's not to say they're terrible. It's not to say it's that there
No.
are 7 teams that are better than the Miami Dolphins, and I would prefer for those 7 teams to be the teams that are in.
That's exactly right.
I want the best teams to be in the playoffs.
That's exactly right.
I'm
not interested in the college. I'm not interested in this college thing that they're doing.
Well,
I'm sorry. I'm
but
not
it's
interested.
It's also a goofy bit. Like, obviously, it didn't matter because Fitzpatrick didn't play today.
Yeah,
but like,
COVID.
You won with Ryan Fitzpatrick, only to turn around and say you're going right back to that. Never made any sense to me. Like,
2 have been benched 3 times that I
correct.
can
Like,
count.
at some point. By the way, KZ says they actually only played a quarter and a half with the starters in Buffalo.
No way. No, they played. No,
Oh.
KZ. I definitely think they played till halftime. I think they played till halftime,
I don't know.
KZ.
I was not paying attention, so I couldn't tell you. But that is particularly hilarious for the Dolphins. If they're getting shellacked like this when
With the
when
backups.
Bills aren't put Matt Barkley in the game. Paul, for me, the playoffs is going to be more about what the coaching staff does this time around, and what we're talking about, sticking to what you
Yep.
do best, even
Yep.
if you're down by 7 or 10 points, more so than Lamar trying to get his first win.
I agree with that.
That to me, this is more about like the Kansas City conversation from earlier in the season, right? The biggest thing I can point to is the Kansas City game this year is the most head-scratching, puzzling, befuddling, what in the living F are you doing football game that I can point out. The game last year really did come down to you had 2 4th and 1s that you didn't convert.
Correct.
I have absolutely no problem with them. That's the type of football team they're supposed to be. It's crazy that they didn't convert either one of them, but everything turned at that point. They were still trying to be aggressive. I didn't sense the same complete abandonment that people are trying to make it out to be, or the Derrick Henry storyline. It came down to 2 4th and 1s against Tennessee.
It did.
What I'm worried about is the Kansas City thing. I'm worried about
As we should be. We should be concerned about that.
we look at this game and we just decide for whatever reason that we want to be something other than what we are.
They want to make the Kansas City game a Mahomes versus Lamar conversation. I feel like they've done that essentially outside of the rookie season in 2018 when they just let Lamar do his thing. The other games have been just that, and that's the part that I think that where they get lost in translation with, because Patrick Mahomes is a completely different animal than Lamar Jackson, and he does completely different things. When you try to make Lamar be something that he's not because you want to have some type of quarterback duel, it makes no sense. Let him do what he does.
Correct.
And allow that to be part of the duel.
And your team to do what you do, right?
The Tennessee situation is a little bit different because you did have guys that weren't playing in that, I believe.
Mark Ingram was definitely not the same.
Not the
that
same.
Day, yeah.
Did Calais play in that game? I don't think
Oh,
he
you're
did.
talking about this year's Tennessee game. He was talking about last year's.
Oh, that
He's talking about the
okay,
playoff
so that
game from
playoff
the
game
year.
last year from the rip was, yes, you're right. Mark Ingram was obviously the biggest, one of the biggest components
Yeah.
of that team. Doesn't play, not playing. That played a big part. And from the rip, from the defensive perspective, because remember that the pick happened and then literally what was the next play? They did a play action, boom, touchdown.
Yeah.
And it just felt from that point on, they felt pressure. As opposed to just allowing
So,
themselves
and
to
that-
just be like, look, this is just the beginning
Right.
of the game.
What Paul's
We still
talking
got 4
about
quarters
is that
to
it
go.
felt like they got away from the dominant ground as soon as they fell
did,
behind it all.
But that's what
Correct.
I'm saying. He threw a pick in the first series. The next play is a play action touchdown, and they felt like they needed to get away from what they did best. Obviously, Mark Ingram not being there probably played a role in that because that was their featured back. So there's some things that happened. I think that this year you don't really have that type of pressure now. I'm concerned because it's historically, from a Ravens perspective, and then maybe in other teams too, Greg Roman does have a tendency to switch the light off real fast before he needs to. Did you learn your lesson from the other years?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to go with no, because he's done this as an OC essentially his whole career. You would like to think that somebody is talking to him and saying, look, whatever happens when we get in this time, you cannot make the switch as soon as you do.
right.
You literally need to be
Right.
down 3 scores for you to decide.
Right. This is who we are.
This is what you need to do.
We saw
different.
the Titans week ago against Green Bay. We're down by like 5 scores in the fourth quarter and still giving the ball to Derrick Henry.
Because he is the bread and butter of that football team.
If they're going to succeed, it's going to be because of him.
And
that's
so,
the way it's going to go.
exactly. And if the Ravens are going to succeed in any playoff position, it's always going to start and end with Lamar Jackson. He is the reason why they're there.
But-
he will be
but
the reason
specifically when we
why
say
they
that,
continue to trend to the next level.
It's not Lamar Jackson throwing the ball 50 times.
No, I'm just talking about his game in general. I'm
Right.
talking about him running.
But I mean, that's why I would expand it. I would say it's about running. It's about running the football. This team is not. I'm saying it's not. Maybe they could. Maybe they could beat a really good team in the postseason throwing the ball 50 times. Maybe they could. I don't know.
Well, right now I
have no reason.
We know last year they did it and it didn't work.
Correct.
That's the one thing we do know.
To me, it's whatever the circumstances are, you have to be committed to doing what you do. To your own identity. Nothing else matters. Who the opponent is doesn't matter. The game situation does. Until you get into extraordinary circumstances, right? When Lamar came back in after pooping against Cleveland, he needed to throw the ball on that play. You couldn't run in that spot. But you get what I'm like.
Yes.
Outside of that type of situation, you have to remain committed to what it is that you do.
But Lamar Jackson makes that play go. We do understand that, right? Lamar Jackson makes that play go because on that play, everybody is playing the run. Everybody comes up because they think he's running to get the first down. Meanwhile, he's looking down the field the whole time. So that's the part that I'm saying about you have to let Lamar Jackson be Lamar Jackson, because the running ability, yes, but the fact that defenses think that he's going
correct.
to run,
He's
and
a
then
threat, right.
and meanwhile he still has his eyes down the field looking for an open receiver, is what makes him dangerous as well. Don't take that away from him because you're down a score or 2. And if it's early, you know what I mean. If you start putting pressure on that team early, it's never going to be good. I don't see how you get a good outcome from that. I hope we've learned from it. I'm not optimistic, though, Glenn, but I'm going to hope that they realize Lamar is the beginning and the end of this.
We cannot react until we get to that point.
Correct.
By the way, I would like for them to get over to the Pittsburgh game as quickly as possible so we can see how that. Not that it matters to the Ravens. The Ravens, obviously, it's irrelevant. It's just that it does matter to the Browns and whether or not they get in. What happens here is Pittsburgh.
The Dolphins have helped them anyway.
Knocking on the door of trying to tie things up against Cleveland. So that's what's going on there. Now, it gets us to the point, by the way. Project Game Day postgame show is also brought to you by Wise Markets. Rita, I'm going to present this scenario to you because we now know we're down to 2 potential opponents, right? Like, it will not be...
And you know I'm annoyed. Right?
I know you're annoyed because you would rather it be Pittsburgh.
I wanted it to be Pittsburgh.
I would have, of course, we
really
all would have
bad.
Pittsburgh.
I really want that. I hate you, Miami
It's
Dolphins.
That's off
I
the
hate
table.
you.
That's off the table. There's 2 options
This
left.
is why I wasn't rooting for y'all now, because you didn't belong there to begin
By the way,
with.
Pittsburgh scored, so now they're going to go for 2.
Stupid. I'm annoyed.
You're down to 2 options. I will present the first one to you, and then I'll present the second one to you. We're going to play the percentages. I am going to say, if the Ravens face blank, you feel percentage good about their chances of winning that football game. All right? If the Ravens play the Colts, you feel blank % good about their chance of winning that game.
70.
Okay? If the Ravens play the Titans, you feel blank % good about them winning that football game.
70.
Really?
Yep.
I can't agree with you on being the same number. I got no problem with your saying it's 70. I can't agree with you being the same number.
All right, 65 then.
I don't have to bully you into changing your
luckily,
number.
well, you told me I had to.
I know it. No, I didn't tell you.
And I'm only going to subtract 5.
I just couldn't agree with you. That's all.
I'll only subtract the 5 because the Titans already beat them this year. But honestly, they shouldn't have. The Ravens.
No, the Ravens imploded. They were up by 2 scores.
Correct. The Ravens imploded. So it's not. They're not.
Apparently, Pittsburgh failed in the 2-point conversion, so they're going to try it on.
They're going to answer. They're not beatable. They're not beatable. I mean, they're not. They are beatable.
You mean they're not unbeatable? I agree with that.
Yeah, I meant to say they are beatable. They're beatable. The Ravens just have to figure out how to close. And so the point that I was making when you said the Titans, and I was talking about this year, is that they had some guys that were missing from that football game. So you now have those guys. You should have those guys back, and now you're playing at a more confident level from an offense perspective. So I think that the Ravens can beat both of those teams.
So I agree with you when it comes to that, right? I agree with you that they can beat both those teams. My percentage would be more like 75-80 for Indianapolis and closer to 50-50 for Tennessee.
And that's fair, right? 50-50 for Tennessee because you've been 0-2 in the last two attempts of playing against Tennessee. So I get, and Derrick Henry is always going to be a problem.
And really, with Tennessee, it's just about their ability to take you out of your game.
I am one to believe, Glenn, that the Ravens were still doing whatever wacky crap that they were doing in the previous weeks of trying to do something different that they weren't familiar with. And that's why I think that game went the way that it did.
And again, the Ravens played the game they wanted to play against Tennessee.
I don't really agree with that.
They just came up short at the end, and the defense was the problem, right?
The defense is the reason why. But I think that from an offensive perspective, they've gotten a little bit more close to what they were doing last year than when they played the Titans game. That's how I see it.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
I don't disagree with that at all. Tennessee is, if they come out of the chute, dominant on the ground, then using that to set up Ryan Tannehill, who's played quite well, and A.J. Brown, who's been outstanding, Tennessee is capable of scoring early and taking the pressure off of their defense, which we all know is their weakness, of them taking chunks of time off the clock, of them doing those types of things. Indianapolis's defense is fast and capable, and we saw for a half, they shut the Ravens down, right? The Ravens couldn't move the ball for a half against Indianapolis. A couple adjustments, and the Ravens had no problem whatsoever moving the ball against Indianapolis. And my point is more like defenses aren't going to be what I fear for the Ravens, and that sort of goes back to what we talked about of how they've played down the stretch. If they're doing their thing,
they should be fine.
No current NFL defense. Like, I would fear maybe facing like the 86 Browns, or the Bears, not the Browns, the 86 Bears, but there's no current NFL defense. NFL defenses right now are good, but like 2020 or 21 version of good. None of them are so dominant that if your offense is doing what it's supposed to be doing, they are particularly capable of preventing you from doing it. That's the nature of defense in the NFL at this point. So the Colts and the Steelers probably have the two best defenses of any of the playoff teams, but yet I have no fear of either one of those defenses. What I fear is facing an offense that's clicking so much that it nullifies your own defense.
I agree.
And so the Titans scare me enough to say, but when I say scare me, I'm saying I think it's 50-50. I think the Ravens doing what they do are absolutely not just capable, but arguably should be able to go down to Nashville, dominate, play the way that they want to play, and win that football game the way that we all thought they would a year ago. That doesn't mean that I know that they will, because I do still think there's enough of an argument that Tennessee can do all the things that Tennessee wants to do.
Absolutely. And my percentage is not to be disrespectful to Tennessee by any means. My percentage.
By the way, Cleveland will hold on. They will get in. Just barely. Just barely holding on against a bad football team.
Right. My percentage is not about the Titans. It's about what the Ravens are, what I think that they're doing right now.
I hear
and
you.
So that's what it's boiled down to. It's no disrespect to what Tennessee is doing, or how they've played, or not even to that loss. Even though the Ravens did have a 2-score game on that, guess what? They lost that football game. So it is what it is. I'm just saying that I think that right now with the momentum that they have, I am confident that they have been poised to make a nice run in the playoffs. And that the Titans is probably not their issue. There's some other teams that I find to be bigger issues for the Ravens than the Titans. Playing them also gives them some insight on, how to play them as well.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So that helps. So that really is what it boils down to. With the Colts, I think I picked so high, not because they beat them, because I don't really trust Phillip Rivers at this point.
No.
I mean, he is a shell of himself. He can't throw the ball down the field like he used to. If you start putting him in positions to do that,
they've run the ball pretty well,
have.
and they've gotten T.Y. Hilton back involved down the stretch, obviously.
Yes. And T.Y. Hilton didn't play in the last game,
Yep.
so I understand that. I just think that Phillip Rivers potentially makes that a bad day for the Colts.
I would far rather face Phillip Rivers than I would face Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry.
I agree with that.
And the defense argument.
absolutely.
I get it. The Colts defense is far better than the Titans defense. I just don't think if the Ravens do what they do, that defense is going to be what beats them. I think the difference is going to be, is there an offense that's up for the challenge? The way that Cleveland nearly beat them a few weeks ago.
Correct.
Because their offense was up for the challenge.
Yep.
I think that's going to be how the Ravens go down.
Yep.
Jeff, it's only fitting that our likely opponents are Tennessee and Kansas City. Time to exercise some demons. There is a weird part of me, Rita, why I definitely am with you that I preferred if it would have been Pittsburgh. I'm kind of, maybe it's just the football fan in me. Pittsburgh's so uninteresting and so they're just not a compelling football team.
They're not, and the fact that the Ravens in both contests lost to them by a score. And you didn't even cover when they didn't have anybody out there playing in the second game. You didn't cover, and you had your guys. Pittsburgh had their players. The Ravens had 18 guys that were not there, including a nice handful of starters, and yet you could not cover that football game. And so, to me, I think that they have a L coming from the Ravens, and it would be very sweet.
I understand it would be sweet.
Playoffs.
Now, let me separate that from football fan. Glenn football fan. Don't care about the Ravens, football fan. I'm way more interested in Ravens Titans because that to me is sexy.
Because they was petty as hell before the game, and they was doing all that stuff.
I'm talking more about I genuinely believe that that's something that at any point this season we could have said that might be an AFC Championship game, right? I just don't. It is so difficult for me to squint and see a way that Pittsburgh's winning. Could they beat Cleveland next week? Of course they could, right? Cleveland's fraudulent for sure. I don't see Pittsburgh beating any of the good teams in the AFC, any of the actual Super Bowl threats, right? I don't see that, and look, they can prove me wrong in the whole deal. I don't see it. But Tennessee, because of what they do, I think could.
It's very hard to defend a guy like Derrick Henry,
right.
And although the defense did falter in the second half, you do have to give them some type of credit because they didn't allow Derrick Henry to get 100 yards rushing until they got into overtime.
Yep.
So, if you can contain him, now obviously they still have guys, A.J. Brown and all those other guys that you have to account for, but that feat within itself is a very hard thing to do because he is the bread and butter of that offense. Everybody is going to go to Derrick Henry, and that's why play action is so big to them because of it.
100%.
But,
I just it's sexier to me. That's a sexier
and it has a little bit more
game.
drama. A recent drama, let me say recent drama, right? Like the Ravens and Steelers obviously is a rivalry, but it appears, right, over the last few years, it's been like a respectable rivalry, like where the Steelers and the Bengals have become more vicious and more gritty, right?
I think you're onto something.
You get what I'm saying?
I think you're onto
so
something.
it's like, yeah, we don't like the Steelers and the Steelers don't like us, but it's like, oh, we respect y'all, right? Where it's like, it ain't like, I can't stand, when they play the Bengals, that's really how they feel. Like they literally can't stand Cincinnati. And that's translated from, Andy Dalton to where they are now.
Sure.
That had the Steelers and Ravens.
It fooled me into betting on the Bengals to cover today. That was.
But it didn't. But with the Ravens and Steelers, the hatred part of it really didn't translate as new guys started to come in. It did become more of a respect type of thing.
Sure.
Where the Titans and the Ravens, there's some things, there's people who feel disrespected. You know, you got some talking. The head coaches was going back and forth, and you know, they had a little chatty fest. It has a little bit more drama uptick to it. And let's not forget too, because was Mike Vrabel the coach when they beat them down like 27-0 a couple years ago?
I think he was. Yeah, he was already there.
So do you ever think that he's forgotten that?
Oh no. He's got that Belichick.
Yeah. So it's. I think it started there, and then it's just kind of manifested into what this is now, whatever it is.
Paul speaks to what you're speaking to, Rita. Ideally, I'd sooner face Rivers and the Colts in the first round, but I cannot lie. If the Ravens go into Tennessee and win, it will be nice to beat that a-hole Vrabel.
See?
I can't stand him about as much as Jeff Fisher used to annoy me when he coached the Titans. There is something about it that is intriguing. And again, I get it. This is Ravens Steelers. There will always be intrigue to Ravens Steelers. But for some reason, it falls a little flatter to me this year. I think it'd be more valuable
because they're not as good. That's why.
We all can see it.
Yeah.
They're just not that good. They're good. They're good enough that they deserve to be there.
Like they're 13-3 good, but it's but we saw y'all. Like y'all.
They're 12-4 because they lost today.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Whatever.
Okay,
12-4 good.
Right.
But whatever, right?
Look, they're just, you don't see anything about them that makes you believe that they're really a threat to go win a Super Bowl. And because of that, I don't know, it doesn't get me juiced the same way.
That's fair.
And I'm sure if it had been Steelers this week, we would have all been ramped up and excited and ready to go. And it also would have provided the opportunity for Lamar to get the Steelers, the Ben Roethlisberger monkey off his back, right? And the truth being that he just, even in the game he beat the Steelers, he played terribly. It was his worst game of his MVP season was against the Steelers. He has not played well against the Steelers. Like in 3 tries, because he didn't play the second one.
Yeah.
In 3 tries, 2. He only played in 2 of those because he didn't play this one, right?
That's correct. Because in 2018, the second game is when Joe got hurt,
right.
and then
so
he comes in.
Exactly right.
So you're right. It's only been 2 outings.
2 games. They won one of them. They lost one, but he played poorly in both of them.
He did.
Right? Like, he was terrible. He was fortunate that he didn't have to face they were facing Devlin Hodges and Mason Rudolph the first time. This time, they didn't have the same fortune. The point being, that would have been nice to give him an opportunity to sort of get that monkey off of his back. But the Tennessee thing, from a football standpoint, it smells to me like a primetime type of game. Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson on the same field. That smells like big, like kind of sexy, kind of Hollywood. Yeah. By the way, you've got a new name for Marquise Brown.
Avenue Brown.
Now, when did that happen?
When he was dropping passes.
But you were just calling him Mr. Brown for a while.
Oh, I've been calling him Avenue Brown for a while too. Right. So Mr. Brown was my initial, and then I was like, nah, we got to give him because Mr. Brown could be a lot of Browns. There's a lot of Browns out here, right? So I went from Broward County Brown, Sandtown Brown, and what's stuck is Avenue Brown.
I like it.
And look, I tweeted that I was, he making me think about calling him the H word. People was like, nah, don't do it yet. And I was like, all right, you're right. The playoffs still got to happen.
Drop that one today. That was brutal.
And Glenn, honestly, stuff like that is what irritates me, because in Lamar's struggles in terms of certain passing situations, whether he overthrows a ball or whatever, when he does drop dimes and then they get dropped.
Stuff.
You know, the stat is an incompletion. It goes as an incompletion, but that's not clearly that's not Lamar's fault. Luckily, Lamar literally dropped another dime in that same series, which was a touchdown to Boykin. Yep. But come on, man. I mean, you're getting open, you're blowing past coverages, and then.
I hear you. Jacob, is it fair to say that the Ravens' success in the postseason depends on if the coaches get in their own way?
Yes, of course. And isn't that how we've had these conversations? Isn't that what happened last year?
I don't think it's the entire. I don't think it's fair to make it that singularly, right?
No, it's not. It's not.
Because there's still the scenario. For example, I'll bring up the Steelers game from earlier this year. You can't give the ball to the other team.
I agree.
Right? Like, there are scenarios in which the Ravens can lose, and it's not just because the coaches got away from the thought process or whatever. There are scenarios, absolutely, where the Ravens can do this to themselves just with their play on the field. And while Lamar has been great down the stretch, that what happened against Pittsburgh, they lost that game for one reason earlier this season. They lost it because Lamar Jackson gave the ball to the other team 4 times. And in brutal, unthinkable types of ways, right?
Man.
Like, not tip balls, not bad luck.
I was there.
Oh, that's right. They were letting fans in at that point. I forgot about that.
I was at the one and only game we were
Yeah,
allowed
right?
to go into.
And it was just, it came down to, so like that could play out. It could just be, and I'm not even talking Lamar single-handedly. The players could screw this up.
I don't disagree at all. We do have to place blame where it is, because at the end of the day, the guys on the field are the ones that are supposed to execute the plays.
100%.
And if they don't do it, we have to hold them accountable. I think though that we do have to start holding play calling accountable. And the one thing I will say though, Glenn, is that I think that we've talked about Greg Roman over the weeks, and I think that he's gotten better with his play calls and his schemes over the weeks.
I think it's clicked for everybody. After the COVID debacle.
Yep.
Everything
that literally was kind of
clicked.
like the start of, like, you started to see them going back to what they were doing, but adding some additional concepts. It would be really cool to see if there was a play today. I believe Marquise Brown, this was his second touchdown, one of his touchdowns, where they had Duvernay, Brown, Boykin, and maybe Dez was out, or Andrews.
Was this the one in the corner of the end zone?
There.
Is this the one you're thinking
No,
of?
he's like in the he catches the touchdown in the middle.
Oh yeah, that was a great play.
And so,
yeah, absolutely.
So the personnel
they had
there,
everybody else kind of go.
Yeah, like the personnel was right, the play calling was right, and I was like, these are concepts I'd love to see more of. Another thing that they did was they had all three guys back there. They had J.K., they had Gus, and they had Lamar on the same play, and it was a nice shift. I would like to see more things of that nature.
Yep.
Make these guys guess what you're going to do, who's going to get the ball, And so I do see a little bit of an evolution since the COVID situation has happened, especially from a past concept perspective. It's still not where it needs to be, but I think we would be wrong if we don't at least acknowledge that it has gotten better in the past 5 weeks.
I think we have to acknowledge that players have played. Like we talked about Miles Boykin last week.
Yeah.
Miles Boykin has played really well.
Yep.
I'm not trying to oversell it. I'm not trying to tell you that I think Miles Boykin should be a number 2 receiver for this team next season, something like that. I'm saying he's played well and has earned the role beyond just being a blocker, which he's always been.
He's been a really good one, by the way.
No doubt. He has earned more opportunities because he's played well. We have to acknowledge that. When Devin Duvernay's gotten his chances, he's played well. The offensive line, despite everything, has played really well.
Orlando Brown has done
Orlando Brown's been a monster. No question.
Very good. I mean, obviously, that's his natural position, so I'm not surprised that he's playing well, but I'm surprised at how well he's played.
No question.
Better, essentially, there than probably at his right tackle position when he goes back. But, yeah, you're right. Like, everybody has settled down, it appears, and they've adjusted.
Some of it falls on the schedule has broken too, and like that we have to acknowledge all of these things, but we acknowledge all of them. We say okay, yes, correct.
Schedule is the schedule.
KZ says he's feeling 50-50 no matter whether it's Indianapolis or Tennessee.
Look, because at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. Everybody they're all in the playoffs for a reason. They all have an opportunity to win a football game. So, that was just, to me, that was just too nice to say, 50-50, and
I don't. I just don't feel
drama.
I don't feel that way.
I wanted the drama.
I understand what you're saying, KZ, but I genuinely don't feel that way. I feel like it's 50-50.
Right, like KZ, you don't think that one team is better than the other? Like, come on.
I mean, specifically with Indianapolis, I absolutely feel that it's 50-50 when it comes to Tennessee. I feel that way. I genuinely feel like it's 50-50. I don't feel that way about Indianapolis. I think if you end up playing Indianapolis next week and you lose that game, it is shocking disappointment that you would lose to a team that's so mediocre.
I agree.
If you lose to Tennessee and you battle and it's a thriller, we're going to still have all the same problems with the Ravens losing their first playoff game. It's going to be a real issue. But I can, from accepting it at face value for what it is, I can say you lost to a really good football team that is going to have a chance to beat anybody they play in the postseason. I can live with that. If it's Indianapolis, if you go out to Indianapolis next week and lose a playoff game, We got to have some deep conversations about.
I'm going to feel away. Yes, I realize how fast that defense is. I'm still going to feel away about it, and you should too, KZ, because offensively, Phillip Rivers does not level that team
you got no business losing
a
playoff game to Indianapolis, especially with minimal fans in the stands. Like you have no business.
Yeah, I agree.
Losing a playoff game to Indianapolis. I like James Prochet. This is from Paul, but I have to say that I've enjoyed Devin Duvernay being more aggressive as a punt returner the last couple weeks and not fair catching everything in the playoffs. We Ravens fans know a timely big play on special teams can make the difference. Yeah, fine. I'm not gonna say too much about that. I ultimately, the football coaches say make sure you have the ball.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
Make sure we have the ball at the end of this play. Stecca is trying to guess what time the game might be. Stecca says Cleveland-Pittsburgh, the early candidate to be the 1 p.m. game next Sunday. Ravens at Titans or Colts probably has 4 p.m. or 8 p.m. Saturday vibes to me. What would be the Sunday game? Yeah. What would be the game that they would want on Sunday night if it's not like Ravens-Tennessee? Ravens-Tennessee feels to me like a Sunday night type of a game next week.
Just give me that game over and done.
I know we don't want it to be a prime. That's not what we want. I understand that, but it feels like a big primetime game to me. AJ, and look, I'm fine with this. Like you want to. AJ says go Texans. Of course, in that scenario, then it would be the Colts, provided they win. I got no problem rooting for it. I will say, and
I don't really care.
You say that as someone who really wanted to be the Steelers. You really wanted it to be the Steelers.
Because that's personal, Glenn.
All right.
That's a personal preference because I want them to get their ass whipped by the Ravens. The one that they've been waiting for this whole year that the Ravens couldn't do, but somehow stayed in the football game. That's really it. I just wanted the Ravens to give the Steelers a big old playoff L because they couldn't do it in the regular season for different reasons.
This is what I said at halftime.
That's it.
I said at halftime, I would prefer it to be the Steelers because I don't think the Steelers are very good, right?
And then there's that. You can, and then you can advance.
Well, but that's the same argument for why you'd prefer it to be the Colts than to the Titans, right? But this is a weird feeling. I get that right now the Ravens have to win a playoff game.
Yes,
they have to prove they can win a playoff game. But just because that still looms over them doesn't mean that the goal isn't winning the Super Bowl or that the expectation going into this season wasn't winning the Super Bowl. If the Ravens win one playoff game against Indianapolis, for example, next week, and then turn around and lose the following week to Buffalo, actually at this point, I do not see any of the lower three seeds winning a game. I mean, maybe Cleveland beats Pittsburgh. Like that's possible. So if they do, then it would be Kansas. Then it would If it's Cleveland, then it would be Buffalo. If not, if all the top seeds win, then the Ravens would be in Kansas City. If they beat Indianapolis and turn around and lose to Kansas City, I don't think I'm going to feel as though this was a particularly successful season just because they got the first round playoff monkey off their back. That's not the line of demarcation for me. It's unfortunately the first thing they have to accomplish because they failed the last couple of years. Right. But my measurement for where this franchise isn't did they figure out the way to win one playoff game.
Right.
So if you can't go beat Tennessee next week, you know where you are. You're going to have to beat those teams if you're going to be winning a Super Bowl. You can't just get the bad teams in order to win a Super Bowl. The last time around that they won one, they got a gift of only having to play Indianapolis in the first round, right? And that was not a good Indianapolis team. But then they had to follow it up by going to Denver and going to New England and beating the best team in the NFC in order to win the Super Bowl. You can't luck your way into. You can't get favorable matchups all the way to winning a Super Bowl. You're going to have to beat those teams at some point.
I agree.
So if it's Tennessee, it's Tennessee. So be it. Let's go do it.
Yes, it is what it is.
It's the most likely scenario. Andrew, I like Boulevard Brown because Hollywood Boulevard is a total S show, just like him. That's again. No. That's unfair. It's comical. I'll agree with you. It's unfair, though. Yes, it sucks that he dropped the ball there and he hasn't consistently made good plays.
But then he had two touchdowns.
Let's stop trying to trash. There's a difference between
trashing.
I didn't say you. Andrew Stecca did.
Yeah, Andrew.
He did.
You mean? That's mean.
It's a difference between saying someone isn't quite what we maybe hoped they would be versus saying someone's terrible and can't play football.
Somebody asked a question to me on Twitter today, and they said, "What would you prefer? Would you prefer to re-sign Snead?" And honestly, I forgot that. I thought that his extension was a 2-year deal. It's actually a 1-year deal, so it does expire after this season. Or would you trade Brown? And I was like, well, honestly, I'm not really I'm not in the business of giving up on Brown now. He's a second-year player. Like, why do you think that they don't? Can't they do both?
What do you think you're getting in a trade? First of all, what do you think you're getting in a trade for Marquise Brown?
I was getting ready to say, so it's not like he's playing at some type of elite level where you're going to get a whole bunch from him. You're probably going to get a third-day pick if you at this point, right?
I mean, you just be trading for the sake of trading.
That's really it. And I'm not giving up on a guy that to me appears to have some mental hiccups that he could potentially work through.
And by the way, he's still a contributor.
He is right. I don't
know if y'all remember. He did happen to make the most important play of the season.
He did. He has like 9 touchdowns, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, like,
I think so. I think he has like 9 touchdowns.
Sounds right. That sounds right.
So my thing is like, why we can't have both? Why can't they just extend Snead or re-sign Snead again? And why can't
upgrade at wide receiver and still have him be a part of the mix?
And then have him be a part of the mix.
We try too hard sometimes with some of these things. We don't acknowledge what something is. Again, Marquise Brown is not a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. He is not an upper echelon wide receiver in the NFL. And yes, it will forever be frustrating because we will look in Seattle and see DK Metcalf, and we will look in Tennessee and see A.J. Brown, and we will know that those 2 guys could have been Baltimore Ravens, and we will be infuriated that they aren't. I get it. I get that. I fully understand that we will think about that eternally. But it doesn't change what Marquise Brown is, which is a contributor for this football team, someone who's been a helpful piece, who, again, made the most important play of the season. Lamar and he did, combined, made the most important play of the season.
Didn't drop that one.
No, we have to acknowledge these things.
Yeah, and so like I'm cool with us like making jokes about him and being being
disappointing
and giving him some tough love because he deserves it because of what he said. Don't come on the timeline being upset about the soldiers. I don't think that we would not be so hard on him if he didn't come to the timeline and say what he said. Well, guess what? You did it, and we are going to give you the blues. But I'm not going to call him a bum. I'm not going to say I'm giving up on him. I think that he still can be a good contributor to. He is a contributor to this football team that I think could be a better contributor to this football team, and that's really what it boils down to for me. I'm not. Look, let next year happen. Hopefully, they can have some type of off season where they can develop, some more chemistry. And
I hope the Ravens bring in real wide receivers.
Both things and honestly, but until Brown gets himself together, I would like to see Snead be re-signed because I think Snead is a better slot player than Brown is.
I am fine with that, right?
And you can still bring in another guy, whether it's via draft or via free agency, to come in and be on the team, and they can all play together.
But it's lunacy to talk about trying to trade him for what? For what reason?
Because we live in a microwave society, Glenn, and so we want our dividends to immediately cash out. And when they don't, that's what happens. He's a second-year player. People want to see some type of improvement. And ironically, in a weird way, he's putting up touchdowns, but it doesn't feel like he's being a productive player. By the way,
eight touchdowns.
Well, I was close.
Brown. You're close. Yes. Yeah. By the way, not a lot of dudes in Ravens history have 8 receiving touchdowns. Yeah. It's still a smallish group.
Yeah.
Stecca's really trying to double down. Hollywood Boulevard has some fun things going on, but it's also a dark place at times.
Oh, stop! Be nice, Andrew.
He also points out Rams Seahawks could be the Sunday night game, as could Bears Saints, and both of those have better media markets. So that does you
especially
have
LA.
You have a star in Russell Wilson against the LA market. You have a star in Drew Brees in the Chicago market. Yes, those two do have the feel of games that could be.
We were guys. We were the night game last year. Granted, it was a Saturday.
And it wouldn't. Saturday night would still make a lot of sense. Yes. Would still make a lot of sense. Although
I feel like it's going to be a Saturday game, unfortunately, and I'm not too happy about it.
Yeah, I got a bad feeling about that too. Quickly, oh man, what am I missing here? Hang on. From Scott, instead of trading Brown, bringing a number 1 receiver to go with them. That's it. Sort of the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Like, you go get Allen Robinson this offseason. I like Marquise Brown's role on this football team a whole lot better moving forward. I mean, I just do.
I agree.
That's where I am. AJ's still trying to relive Stephon Diggs and DJ. The Ravens have missed on every wide receiver. Yes, they have had the Ravens wide receiver
Y'all will drive
problem
yourselves crazy if you keep doing that. I will acknowledge it for a little bit, but then I got to move on because I can't live.
You and I fought about this once.
I
upon
can't
a time.
wallow in this.
You and I got into it once upon a time about
We did?
this. Yeah, it was about the last one. It was about Torrey. You were ready to see. You were after the New England thing. You were ready to be done with Torrey.
Yes, and that was absolutely an emotional reaction. Overall, I think Torrey was a very good player for this football team.
He remains the best wide receiver the Ravens have ever drafted and developed.
Yes, and that was an emotional response, and I probably had it for a while. And then when my hindsight kicked in, I realized, okay, I mean, because don't get me wrong, I still think Torrey. And that was on him. However, I also have to acknowledge that Torrey Smith gave Champ Bailey an early retirement party just 2 years prior.
It's a lot of things that happened. Smith, and again, that didn't mean that Torrey Smith was a number one wide receiver or that he was an elite top upper echelon NFL
he was an important
receiver.
Piece to this to that football team.
And that was I keep coming back to this. The team that didn't have it. They don't have that. I
would have loved to have seen Torrey stay because I believe that was Steve Smith's first year on that team.
Right.
And for them to continue, so obviously things didn't work out because I think the next year Steve Smith had gotten hurt. But yes, you're right. I did make that comment, but honestly, that was just because I was upset because
it's the only time you and I
held him responsible for that.
It's the only time you and I ever really fought about it.
But I've moved on from that too, though.
I've still thought about it. It still bothers me to this day.
Really?
It really bothered me how people reacted to Torrey Smith. That bothered me.
Well, I like Torrey a lot. I
don't need you to like him as a. Not, and you and I aren't fighting about it.
Right.
A lot of people were doing he's a good guy, but he's not a good football player.
And I don't agree with that.
And that it was infuriating.
Now that part I don't agree with. I do agree that Torrey is a very good football player. He was a very good football player, and I think that he played his role really well on this football team. And I think that there were times that we didn't give Torrey the credit where he deserved it, and we just didn't give it to him, whether it was because you didn't like him, whether it's because you didn't really see how that play was supposed to be, whether it was a PI call. I mean, because he was the king of getting the PI.
He's very good at that.
So do y'all realize that's a good thing, right?
Yes. Like we've talked about this a lot.
You realize getting a dude that can get PI calls is a good thing.
If somebody's PI yards counted as receiving yards in fantasy football,
Torrey would have been the
and we would feel significantly different about them because of it.
So that's what I'm saying. Like we do too many times use stats to try to tell us how good players are on teams, and then that could be in the sense of Brown.
And by the way, I don't think to this point Marquise Brown has even proven himself to be as good as Torrey Smith. He's been in moments. He's flashed that he could be.
He's too inconsistent,
but he hasn't been consistent enough for me to even say that he's good as Torrey Smith. But that's the feel that I have right now is reminiscent, where we are judging by another standard that's not fair. I never thought that you should have given Torrey Smith, hey, you're the guy. You're the only wide receiver we're going to employ. I never felt that way. And I don't feel that way about Marquise Brown right now.
I mean, Marquise Brown knows that he needs to level up. Literally, if you watch, obviously the biggest game of the year was the Ravens and Browns Monday Night Football game. And there's a lot of sound on those games. And one of the clips that got circled around was after the catch, after the touchdown that he caught. On the sideline, he's having conversations. I think it's Mark Ingram. I could be wrong. But they're talking. He's like, that's a way to make a play. And he said, I've been stinking it up this whole game. I had to do something. So he knows, guys, that he could do better.
100%.
He knows he could do better.
But what I would say is, like, if he's your third wide receiver, if he's your third or your fourth wide receiver, there are a number of teams that would kill to have Marquise Brown. The problem is we thought he was going to be number one. Instead of judging him for what he is, we're judging him by what we wanted him to be.
Absolutely. And but that's what comes with a number one pick, though.
I get it.
That's a first rounder, excuse me. That's what it comes with.
If you're asking me how I feel about the pick was a miss. The pick was a miss. 100%. I will give that to you forever. It should have been one of these other guys, it should have been DK Metcalf. It should have been AJ, but the pick was a miss because it was a first-round pick. But we can't judge that based on what the player is now moving forward. There are picks that can miss, but the player can still be valuable to your franchise in some way.
I agree.
Marquise Brown is still a football player. He's still a helpful piece, even though we know what he isn't at this point.
I agree.
From Daryl, we were talking earlier about how everybody stepped up. He says that's true. Everyone is starting to step up, in coordinators included. That's what we're talking about, how the last 5 weeks has gone. AJ wants to know if Stanley can play right tackle because Orlando Brown's been so good.
He ain't going over there.
No, that's
he's
not
going there, guys. He got paid as a left tackle. He's going to be a left tackle. If anything, Brown is moving back to right tackle, and that's where that is. I had somebody ask me, would you consider trading
Ronnie Stanley?
No, not Stanley.
Oh, Orlando?
But, or Orlando Brown.
I've had people ask about trading Stanley. That contract
that's how
is so hard to move.
I think that this is a conversation that you can't really have because he just got that contract, and I don't know how you move that contract.
Yeah.
So I think that the more ideal thing, because he is still in a rookie deal, is
to try to trade Brown.
But honestly, I mean, you got to be giving me some Laramie Tunsil stuff. Because if somebody calls and give you a Laramie Tunsil deal, I think you just got to take
it for just about anybody.
You just got to take it.
Correct.
I think he's too valuable though to give up. Unless it's a deal that you just cannot refuse.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not trading him for the sake of trading him. I agree with you on that.
Right.
I'm not doing that whatsoever. But if you're acknowledging, look, there's still such a huge question about the pass rush thing right now. Like it is the most. There's never been anything that I've had less. We all said a year ago, let's buy ourselves another year. We'll all have a better feel at the end of this year about what the Ravens do in the pass rush department. Not only did it not get less confusing, it's now more confusing because they brought in another pass rusher that has to be paid. We have no clue what the Ravens are going to do. I didn't even, this is how crazy it is. I had Judon on the show the other day. I didn't even bother talking to him about it. Because what the hell is there to say?
No, just like we don't know. Like they don't know either.
No one has a clue as to what's going to go on here. Nobody knows.
If you had an opportunity, Glenn, let's put the EDC hat on.
Right.
Do you let Judon walk? Do you resign? Do you try to sign Ngakoue? Do you try to sign Bowser? Like out of those three, who do you consider to be the most priority?
I've heard this argument from a lot of people that now you should prioritize Bowser because Bowser's the one that you can get at a nice price,
I don't disagree
and he's
with
been
that.
a good player. I hear that, but he's not a. I don't think Tyus Bowser is a big sack guy. Like, I think that he's a playmaker. I think he's a capable, obviously he's had a number of interceptions this season, which is kind of wild. I think he might be a more complete linebacker than we realized he was. I don't think he's a dominant pass rusher. This is why I bring this up, right, Rita? I keep hearing from everybody, at some point you have to pay a pass rusher. It's the nature, you have to pay one of them. If the Ravens wanted to say, we're going to try to just keep finding Zadarius Smiths and Tyus Bowsers, and instead of paying a pass rusher, we're going to pay 2 tackles. And we're going to acknowledge who we are as a football team. We're a team that's going to run the ball. We're going to be an offensive-minded team. We're going to ask the defense to do less because they're going to be on the field less frequently. And we're going to...
like the Colts.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, the Colts, not the current Colts.
No, Peyton Manning.
Right,
Colts.
Yeah, correct. We're going to acknowledge what we've got. We built through the secondary. That's our strength. We know the secondary is our strength. We like what we saw from Patrick Queen this season. We have perennially found prominent defensive linemen. We have found outstanding defensive linemen wherever we wanted to take them. We found decent pass rushers in later rounds. Let's not, Zadarius Smith has turned out to be an exceptional pass rusher. Let's be fair about that. Terrell Suggs was a first-round pick. But we found guys that can play. If the Ravens decide we think we're better off spending the money to have 2 tackles than we are to have, at this price, at the $20 million a year price tag for either of these pass rushers, I don't know that I'd scream about it, Rita. I don't know that I wouldn't walk away from it and say, look, you better go you better add in pass catchers. This is who you are now. You better be prepared for that. But I don't know if I would lose my mind about that being the thought process. Of the 2, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
Judon's the better football player. Ngakoue, you would think, if he was just allowed to go get quarterbacks, would be the more dominant pass rusher. Judon's the better overall football player. I don't know that I would scream about them saying, look, this is We've tried.
So you're saying both? Both just would be okay.
If you think that's the difference in being able to keep Orlando Brown, if you do all the math, you plot out everything you could possibly do, and you say this is going to come down to one thing: we're either going to be able to sign a pass rusher, or we're going to be able to keep Orlando Brown. One or the other. We're not going to be able to do both. And that might very well be, especially if the cap goes down next season, like that might very well be what it comes to. If that's the case, I'm not going to lose my mind if the answer is to keep Orlando Brown. I'm not. It's going to put you up against the you're going to have to knock it out of the park in drafting pass rushers. But I'll listen. We got to get one break in. We'll come back in. We'll wrap it up. We'll look ahead. We don't know who the opponent is, so we can't really look ahead. But we'll
assume.
Yeah, right. We'll come back in. We think it's going to be Tennessee.
Yes,
we'll come back in. We'll talk more about that. Project Game Day postgame show. Ravens win today. They are in. Just awaiting who the opponent's going to be. It's the Chesapeake Employers Insurance Studio Press Box. She's Rita. I'm Glenn.
Tired of online shopping, takeout food, and vacations by car? Then join the COVID-19 Plasma Trials, sponsored by Johns Hopkins University. You could receive plasma that contains antibodies from recovered COVID-19 patients. So if you or a loved one has just tested positive, participating in the trial could help you fight it. Join today at covidplasmatrial.org so we can all get back to boutique stores, jet setting, and not having to eat out of a cardboard box. covidplasmatrial.org. The fight starts here.
Glory Days Grill Fall-Winter Seasonal Menu is now available for dine-in, dine-out, on the patio, or to-go. It's a new season, so enjoy new flavors. Try their new shrimp appetizers, homemade meatloaf, impossible cheesesteaks, and more. They're open from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. Visit glorydaysgrill.com for a location near you. From the Glory Days Grill family, stay healthy and positive during this challenging time in our community.
Looking to get one up on the competition? Supercharge your computer skills. CCBC has classes at all levels from beginner to expert coder. Explore Microsoft Office, gaming, or even ethical hacker. Maybe hardware is your gig. Become A+ certified. All tuition free if you qualify. Call 443-840-4700 or visit ccbcmd.edu/quickreg.
C3 American Exteriors is the area's best and most trusted roof and siding specialists. C3 is also an insurance adjuster's worst nightmare and a homeowner's dream come true. With all of the bad weather, chances are you have some roof and siding damage. Call C3 American Exteriors now to get your roof and siding repairs for the cost of your deductible. Don't let the insurance industry get one over on you. C3 guarantees a 48-hour rapid response. Call 401-9797 or go to c3america.com for a free analysis.
With Wise Market's lowest price guarantee, we guarantee the lowest price in the area. If a local competitor advertises any of our tagged lowest price guarantee items at a lower price, we'll give you double the difference with purchase.
Eat better, spend less, that's Wise.
Calling all Ravens fans. Are you always casually rocking purple no matter what day of the week it is? Are you a Ravens trivia master? Well, at M&T Bank, we're big fans of the Ravens flock, and our purple pride runs deep. That's why we're giving you the chance to show off your Ravens flock fandom and test your Ravens trivia knowledge in the M&T Bank Hunt for Purple scavenger hunt. Make sure you don't miss out. Visit huntforpurple.com for the opportunity to win some awesome prizes. That's the M&T Bank Hunt for Purple scavenger hunt, huntforpurple.com.
If you're looking to make an impact, there's no better place to do that than the U.S. Army. Whether your goal is to fight and cure deadly diseases, develop technologies, or seek adventures across the globe, the Army is where all of that can happen, and so much more. The Army is a team of 1 million individuals working together to take on the most complex problems in the nation and the world, and to win. Ask yourself, what's your warrior? Go to army.com/Baltimore to find out. To learn more, contact your local Army recruiter and find us on social media at U.S. Army Baltimore.
So A.J. Brown apparently got hurt in the first play of the game for the Titans, but came back in.
Yeah, but hasn't he been kind of...
He's been dealing with an ankle thing
all
a little
season,
bit.
yeah.
So obviously that would be something to be monitoring, but he's back on the field. So as we look towards what could be for the Baltimore Ravens next week, it looks like A.J. Brown is good. All right. Apologies. My laptop died, so I can't pull up any of the rest of your comments. I'm so sorry. Somebody, I think it was AJ, brought up how remarkable it is. We were just talking about Torrey Smith, and he's like, dude, Jimmy Smith was drafted before Torrey Smith, by round, and just got another extension. And I do think there's something to be said for the fact that Jimmy Smith has stayed. While, yes, he always misses games, I'm very aware of that. He has played at yes, which it matters. Has played at a high level to the point where here we are a decade in, and the Ravens are signing up for more Jimmy Smith moving forward. Now they're not committing long term to Jimmy Smith, but they're signing up for more Jimmy Smith despite the fact that we're a decade into his career. It is remarkable. I mean, he's not a Hall of Fame caliber player, but we need to recognize
healthy, he's a very good football player.
Rita, I think we need to recognize Jimmy Smith among the great players in this franchise's history.
Somebody did that on Twitter the other day. They were talking about your top 10 Ravens and would he be on there, and most people that replied did have them, if not at the 10, like literally on the cusp at 11.
I mean, it's right. It is right in that, know, like obviously the top 5, and now Lamar, So I mean, like we know who and because Lamar has been so good so quickly, you move him up rapidly on the list, and because Joe Flacco was the quarterback, he gets to be higher on the list than maybe some guys would. But outside of that upper echelon group, he 100% deserves to be in consideration of some of the greatest Ravens of all time.
I mean, he had a little slow start, man. I mean, I was like, wow, this is the first round draft pick.
Yeah.
And then he turned. I mean, but he turned it around. Like it appeared to be like towards like the end of his first contract, he appeared to start making some moves happen, and he turned it around.
There's a reason why we're always so frustrated when we get to the part where Jimmy Smith gets hurt. It's because the Ravens are much better when Jimmy Smith plays.
Absolutely,
they are much better. Have always been much better when Jimmy Smith's been
hopefully
on the field.
these couple of weeks off has given him some new life.
Yep.
Hopefully he plays next
week. It's good
week.
to see Marcus Peters back out there today.
And I listen. Let me be clear. I don't know what happened with that spitting situation. I don't know if he did it intentionally. He says he didn't. I don't know. I'm just taking this away from him. I love Marcus Peters from a personality standpoint. Like, he got that pass interference. He was upset about it, and literally the next play, he
came back and got an interception.
He gets a pick, and he's like running towards the tunnel. No, I just love that he's like, and earlier, and I think in the first quarter or maybe in the first half, he tackled the tight end, which, I mean, look, the tight end got like 8 yards, but he was still talking smack, man. Like, he was still like, no. He was like in his face, and I was just like, I love the fire person. I don't want it to go too far, and that's why I brought up the
spitting thing.
The spitting thing, right? But like, I love that. I love that he's just like, yeah, I'm out here, I'm playing, and who's gonna stop me? And there's nobody better than me. I love the swagger that he has in his personal game, and it's fitting for the type of way that defense plays, how they execute. I love how he's played. I mean, he's had his moments this year where he's looking a little too far in the back and got caught peeking. But overall, I still think Marcus Peters is it's been a good addition overall for this football team.
Rita, do you think you could spend $100 at NFLShop.com right now?
Absolutely.
Well, you could still win. Today's the final day in the M&T Bank Hunt for Purple Scavenger Hunt. This is your last chance to get in to win the $100 NFLShop.com gift card this week. What you got to do, stop by your favorite M&T Bank branch, share a selfie of yourself outside wearing some Ravens gear. You got to post it on Twitter, use the hashtag #CommunityOfFans and the hashtag sweepstakes, and you're in. If you can't make it, if you're not in the area, there's not an M&T Bank branch near you, for whatever reason, unable to do it, you can go to mtb.com/Ravens and find and share a screenshot of the M&T Ravens co-branded debit card. Also, you got to do it on Twitter. Put that screenshot on Twitter. Use the hashtags #CommunityOfFans and sweepstakes, and you are in. To find out more, huntforpurple.com. Today is the last day, so you got a few more hours to get in to the Hunt for Purple scavenger hunt. You better be here next week. I just heard that there's some doubt. I ain't okay with that.
We'll see.
I'm not all right with that. Well, I'm going to say Rita will be here next week. If she's not, KZ will be, but Rita will be here next week.
Depends on the day, hopefully.
We'll hopefully find that out tonight.
Yeah.
I would assume that they'll just normally do this at halftime of the Sunday night game in the final week.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll get that answer tonight at halftime as to when the Ravens will play next week. In the meantime,
Is there a Sunday night game today?
Yeah, Washington. They got to win it. If they win, they win the division.
Boo.
I mean, it ain't great. I'm not trying to pretend like it's going to be a pleasant game to watch, but there's a game. That's all we got.
I guess.
Child,
I guess.
At the NFL Chick on Twitter,
Chick, yeah.
Gridiron Gals Podcast,
Yep.
Glenn Clark Radio on Twitter, GlennClarkRadio.com. We'll be back tomorrow morning, and we'll be with you all throughout the week to get you ready for a wild card round matchup. The Ravens are in. We just wait on who they're playing. Appreciate y'all for joining us. This has been the Project Game Day post-game show from the Chesapeake Employers Insurance Studio. We will see you next week.